Captain Picard met Captain Rix at the Altarian conference. Captain Tryla Scott made Captain faster than anyone in Starfleet history. And Italics B is one of 7 uninhabited planets mined for the Federation by the, wait for it, Ditalics Mining Company. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 1, Episode 24, Conspiracy, story by Robert Sabaroff, teleplay by Tracy Torme, directed by Cliff Bole. More on that in a moment. This was May 7th, 1988. We have a very, very special guest. Makeup effects guru, the legend of Hollywood makeup around the world, Mr. Michael Westmore. Hello, Michael. How are you today?
Hi. Good. How are you doing?
Awesome. And thank you so much for joining us. Also, very special thanks to Grandpa One, aka Tim Baum, for sponsoring this entire season. So, Cirroc, this is his first time seeing this episode, Michael. Cirroc's first time. So we didn't tell him anything. Was this what you expected out of Star Trek, Cirroc?
No.
Yes, I did. I kind of expected that this was good.
Maybe you did. I didn't.
I liked this episode, and the makeup was like ridiculous. It was just like A1. Michael, you're so amazing, and you've done so much legendary work in Star Trek. But when I watched this episode, it was really cinematically done. It felt like motion picture quality.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about this episode?
Well, to me, when I read the script, and I'm going, oh my god, and I never got to really say that again, because it was like we never made anything like this again. It was just everybody's going, wow, and it was just getting into that, and all the requirements that had to be done for it was but I was so used to just following along. Fine, I get the script, this is what I'm supposed to do, so I do it. And just doing this, and of course it was very early on in my 18 years there, so it was actually fun to do. It wasn't like a great challenge or that having to try to figure out how to do it. It all just went into place, doing each one of the steps that had to be done to make every one of those effects work.
When you read the script first and you thought, wow, were you thinking, wow, this can be difficult? Wow, this is surprising? Were you thinking, wow, this is exciting? I had no idea this show was going to give me the opportunity to basically make a horror film with horror film aliens.
Exactly. And that's what I felt. It wasn't, with all the shows, I never, and it's for the total of the 18 years, it's like over 625 episodes.
Wow.
Between all 4 of the series. And I don't think anything ever popped up. The only problem when I ever started to sweat a few bullets was when they'd say, you have to have everything ready in 2 days, where we had 7-day periods on a show, and the further off we could pour the alien or the special effects, you can always do things better and have time if you screw up to figure out what to do, but we didn't always have that way. So I read the script, and basically through that time there, that nobody ever told me what to do. It wasn't like a writer came in and said, now this alien is supposed to look like this. Through the entire time, Rick Berman gave it to me. I would always have him look at the sculptures and things, and I would do a few sketches, but it wasn't where anyone ever told me how to do it or what to do. I worked with the wardrobe department, like with the Borg, where they designed certain heads, and of course we went bald on the Borg after Next Gen, and it was just, I want to say, and everybody, all the makeup artists and everybody, I have heard so many times that I had the greatest job in the world because I had the freedom to create. And I would always find reasons to create the character I was doing. And it never told me in the script. A writer never told me, I want this to look like a sand character from such and such or whatever. No one ever said a word. So it was the ideal job, and I would say in makeup history in Hollywood.
What was the biggest challenge for that climax scene with the whole transformation and that alien basically coming out of his chest? What was some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
Well, to begin with, the officer is sitting there in the chair, and he's got all the little baby bugs which we made in the lab all over him. And they wanted at one point for him the bug to go into his mouth, and you'd see his throat pulsate as it's going down.
Right.
His. Mm-hmm. So the first thing on that was to make a bladder, because the throat is round here, so you just couldn't put a balloon there or something. And there's a way of taking liquid latex and actually taking and making a cast of the actor's throat and putting liquid latex on his throat in the shape you want. And then we had a chemical that was actually the setting agent for latex, and painted it on that first coat on the latex. And then when that dried, put another coat of latex over that, and it would seal the two together. And I'd leave a little hole off of one side, maybe around the side of the neck. And through that, a tube could go into, whether it be a flat tube or a little round one. So we could pump our own air into it. But it was a custom-made bladder for this guy's neck. And that was glued on first. And then on another cast of his throat, sculpted up a very thin layer of foam latex. And that was made just like we'd make the monsters and everything. It's cold, it's foamy, it's like mattress when if you felt it. And these were made particularly thin, and the foam was put into the mold, went into a 200-degree oven, baked for about an hour, came out, and that would be glued over the top of it. So then it would look like it's right. And this is the way a lot of it's done today, even the way it's and glued down. And then I could insert the tube in there when we were filming, and by putting air through that tube, it would make his throat go. It would puff out, and it would made it look after the little alien went down his mouth and was going. It looks like he's little things crawling down.
Now, Michael, I heard a story as to how you pumped air into his neck. Could you tell us that and verify?
Yes, that was. And you think this is very technical. I had it was a 6-8 foot of tubing, and it was connected to that. Went down the back of his coat, and the back down here, down his coat, out the back, down. And of course, the way Cliff the director had set the shot up, nobody could be around there. So I am literally, and I like to do this stuff myself, I'm laying on the floor with the end of this tube, and I'm going, and with a rhythm. And Cliff, the director, and I, we actually have known each other. He's passed away now. Have known each other since kindergarten, and we went to school for up through junior high until he went to a different high school. But we were friends for that length of time, and it was very strange because my name at that time was Mickey before it came Mike and got Michael, went right down the line as time went on. But all of a sudden I hear, Mickey, are you okay? And I'm going, what? So but I was literally starting to hyperventilate. It was wow. It was like, okay, let's do that one more time. And I'm just glad Martin Scorsese wasn't directing it, because when I've been on Marty shows, he does 30 takes. I would have never survived 30 takes.
You might have talent to play a trumpet or something like that.
Yeah, right. That gives blowjob a whole different meaning.
Hey, everybody, is this on?
That might have even come up somewhere along the line.
Probably that
I'm laying on the floor.
Wow, that's so. You got that effect done. That was obviously challenging. And, I always think about the kind of challenges that you're presented with when you have these aliens and these special effects you have to come up with, because there's no book, right? There's no like place you can go to and say, oh yeah, I need a pumping neck.
Michael's the one writing it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're making this stuff up as you go along, right?
Yes. See, it doesn't come up that often. So it's one of those things. It would be nice to have a book. The first book that I wrote, I did after teaching at Los Angeles Valley College, and it had some of these things into it. But how you could simplify it, because I found as I was teaching college students, I couldn't just go with my professional techniques and say, this is how you do it, and these are the words you use and whatever. I had to simplify everything. So my first book was a simplified book, which was used by colleges, and but something you would never put a bladder into it or something like that. I think some Dick Smith may have had something like that in one of his little books that he turned out over the years. But for those that don't know the name Dick Smith, Dick was one of the most brilliant makeup artists. He did The Exorcist and pictures like that.
Wow.
But it was it's like everything was always new, like with Star Trek. 600 and some episodes, and never knew what was going to be asked for until I got that script and read it. And I think there's only one time, and it wasn't because it wasn't in the script. There was a script where Q had his hand on a bar and Whoopi Goldberg had a fork, and she jabs the fork into his hand. And about 10 o'clock at night, Les Landau, the director, wanted an arm or a hand that she could jab the fork into. And I wasn't there. I had gone home because that wasn't called for or anything. But they wanted me to come back. I wasn't coming back. But we didn't have an arm ready. I said, if you want to shoot that in the morning, I'll put somebody on it at 4 o'clock, and you'll have your hand to do it as an insert, But it wasn't that important, so it never was done. But that's the only time I can really remember where something was done that I didn't really have the control on for that moment.
Hey, when the director needs something, give him a hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, but Michael, just a quick side note. You said you taught at Los Angeles Valley College. I took a lot of classes there myself. Just quickly, what did you teach there? Was it a makeup?
It was a makeup course.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Or might have been 8 years. Monday nights. Of course, it's when I was at Universal. And I worked for my uncle, so I could just go to Bud and say, hey, I got to leave tonight. I got to teach class, And it was fun. It was a 4-hour class. And I say, there's a number of my students who are in the business now. And, some of those early ones have already even retired. But I had a lot of fun doing that, working with them.
Was it theater makeup specifically, or was it general?
General.
Okay.
I mean, not beauty makeup, because part of the curriculum was everybody had to do a face cast, and they had to create a character on their faces. And out of my first class that I ever did, 2 of them became pros, and for their final projects, they actually made Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes was popular then. And they made up 2 faces that I want to say were damn good.
That's hard.
For their final, that was the whole idea, was to do, the makeup on yourself. So.
Oh wow. Yeah, this episode. There's something else that stood out to me in this episode that I thought was a change, and I wanted to ask you if there was any conversation about it. Worf's makeup seems to be done better in this episode than I've seen in any time prior. And I wondered because then, watching this Next Generation first season, I'm seeing Worf in a different way than I had known him on Deep Space Nine when we started on season 4.
Mm-hmm.
So he was already, his look was different. His hair was like longer, and his look was more, I would say, set in. And I wanted to ask you about the evolution of Worf's makeup.
Yes, Michael's makeup, the way we started, and at first, what they wanted to do to begin with was to shave his head, and he agreed to it, and then put this bony structure over his bald head. And I said, no. I said, he doesn't want to go around with a bald head, for the length. Of course, we didn't know how long it was going to go. I thought the show at least last 2 seasons. So it became a forehead, a regular Klingon forehead, and which they used in a couple of the movies before that, but they were a different design than mine were, and there were no noses and there were no teeth. So those are things I added to it, was because I had a background in my main mentor was a dental technician and a makeup artist, and John Chambers, and John actually won the Oscar for Planet of the Apes. But I was sitting by his side for 3 years, writing everything in a book that he taught me, where something was purchased, how it was made, how it was done. So I was well prepared when Star Trek came along, because I had things before that, like Masters of the Universe and the movie Mask with Eric Stoltz. So I had my hands in a lot of that, and smaller things at Universal. That little things that we went on there, new characters we would have pop up in the Munsters and stuff, and we were playing with things like that. But now the other thing I do is I get talking and get off in the wrong direction, and you get a
we were on Worf. You were on Worf.
Okay, we're talking about Worf. Great. I forgot about that. Michael, the way he looked in that character. But Michael would come up with ideas. Now, this is an interesting thing. He'd say, I want my hair to be a little shorter, or I want to put it into a ponytail. I mean, this is more so than the girls, than Gates and Marina, conversations. And they would agree. So you will see Michael Dorn change through history. And a lot of it was because that's what Michael wanted to do. So, and they so it was done. Color-wise on his face really didn't change that much, because that's, we had to cover his skin tone, make one total skin tone for him. As far as his wig went, his eyebrows didn't change, his beard didn't change. It always was that damn wig. Or maybe one of the hairdressers, like Joy Zapata on the show, and she might say, I would like to do this. And he'd talk to Dorn. Dorn's off to production. Production says, okay, and it changed. Of course, you were with him for a long time there on Deep Space Nine. I don't think it ever changed.
Well, not too much. He had it out one time when he just had it kind of,
Oh, it did get short, though. Out. It went from all big, long hair to very, very short, almost like a bob. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely a bob. Hey, Michael, so actually one of the images behind me is a completely exploded torso, basically. And I just want to know what went into that. I mean, how much?
That's where it was exciting,
Yeah.
And they with that was you're thinking, that's going to take a little time. This isn't something that comes out of the box in a day. So this being a whole body, that it's too much work for our lab with everything else we're going. We went to Makeup Effects Lab in North Hollywood, and over the years in Star Trek, whenever we had special things like that, and we didn't have time to do them, and it was maybe something big, that Makeup Effects would do it for us. But this body was made there based on the actor's body, with the rib cage and being able to get into it from the back. Because when the body explodes and all the little buggers come flying, that all of a sudden Mother comes out of it. And here we have a hand puppet that has to be controlled from the back that comes up out of it. Now, the other interesting thing with that was my son-in-law, Patrick Tatopoulos, who's a director and art director and designer, very talented man, that he came from Europe and looking for a job, and Make of Effects hired him. And that's the first job he got in America, was literally designing the hand puppet, sculpting that hand puppet. And he has
so cool.
He's got a picture of himself that I have a copy somewhere. But yeah, Patrick did it. So Mother comes up out of that, and being a hand puppet, you can do all kinds of wonderful things with it. And it's that's the thing that kind of, I think, got people, fans of the show, going, "Oh my God, I'm here with my 2-year-old son." It was, and as you say, we made a horror movie.
Yeah, this was a horror movie. There were moments like when that bug was crawling in the mouth. It was just like, I almost had to look away for a second. This stuff sticks in your brain. It reminded me of The Wrath of Khan when they put that bug in his ear.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It had that I've never been able to like burn that out of my memory. It's stuck with me, you know. And this was
no, go ahead.
What was that? No. What was it?
Dan Curry, who was our
we love Dan Curry.
Effects, and Dan and I worked over the years on second unit all the time. All these little special effects, a lot of them were done second unit to get us out of the way and not to hold up the crew. But you know, as far as making anything move, like to make a little bug crawl up his face or something like that, Dan had the ability. All he needed was the item, and boom, he could do anything, you know, in the world.
Wow. And the face that's used in the background behind Ryan, that face that's a digital special effect, right? Is that that's not like so they blended it all together.
Well, and there was on some things that there wasn't really enough time to include it in while we were filming, and it was easier to do that digitally, and having somebody as talented as Dan that can do all this work and do it fast. And he was also, I want to say that we were all under the gun budget wise, but Dan always came through with you know, a feasible and usable budget that made everything work.
Budget, that was the thing that kind of jumped out at me when I saw this. I was just kind of like, I feel like they allocated a lot of funds to this episode. And so I'm thinking, does that mean that they had a few bottle episodes beforehand, and then they're like, hey, there are only 2 episodes left in this season. We got a little bit left. Let's go nuts. Or were they kind of whispering in your ear saying, hey, can you do it on the cheap? We don't have the money to really do this.
No, actually, no. When it came, something that came through like that, you're absolutely right. We would do a show where, you know, maybe 2 people landed on a planet for 99% of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they could save money on it. And not save money, but just the budget on this would be $1 million, and the budget over here is going to be $2 million. And that's in this day and age with all the special effects movies and everything, including the new Star Treks. If we had that money, I don't know what we would have done with that money if we had that much. Because even the budgets on I did 4 movies over my tenure there, and none of our budgets ever came close to what the budgets are today.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I have a kind of a strange question, and I hope you can answer this one for me. What happens to that stuff when you're done with it? That, for example, that corpse that's behind with the puppet and everything, like what happens to it when you guys are done using it? It's all wrapped up. You just put it, somebody say, I'll take this home with me, or
feed it to the seagulls.
That's a prop. So that would have gone into the props for the year. And I don't know if somebody took that home or not. Usually that wasn't done. It wound up all those things that went into property department, and the property department had large spaces where they just put everything in there. You never know when all of a sudden they're going to come back and ask for it. Right. And you better have it there when it was ready. There were 3 stages, sound stages that we filmed on. What was the number where you were?
We were on 17, 18, and 4.
Okay, 16. The 3 in a row there. You were in the middle, and the end, I think it was. And underneath all those 3 stages was a giant basement, and that was filled with props that went back to the 1940s, stuffed underneath those stages. The studio eventually sold them all to one man, and then he only there's a few items that he wanted, and he auctioned those off and got rid of them. But I went down there a couple times, and you just walked around and you'd see, oh my God, look at this, a lamp from Breakfast at Tiffany's and things like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, big classic movies that Paramount made, and all the props are down there. We're still there. So
I saw the stuff that was above ground. I never saw the stuff below. Yeah, I saw the prop. They had that prop. Yeah, they had the prop area above ground with, a bunch of stuff. And I used to walk around there and see all the cool, little props for the set dressing. But I wasn't aware they had all that stuff somewhere. And maybe this mold that you made ended up in another horror film at some point later on down the road.
Yeah. I kept all the molds, and a mold never got thrown away from day one, or from let's see what we had. We really didn't have much in the first episode, but then we had the Traveler, and I had his molds forever. I still have some of them. I still have Stallone's molds from Rocky. It's like they gave me quite a bit of space in an upstairs laboratory, and we had one shelf that was nothing but molds of old age makeups. Every time we did an old age makeup on somebody and had to do it fresh, when we finished with the episode, they'd be up there. And sometimes they would bring somebody back, or maybe these pieces would fit somebody else and we didn't have to go back to stage 1 of molding and sculpting. All we had to do was run the rubber for it. So nothing ever got thrown away.
Well, Michael,
a few things are stolen.
Oh, whoops. Well, this has been so much fun, Michael. We really appreciate you coming and joining to talk about this episode with us. We really hope you'll be back. We'll be calling you again. There's so many great episodes that were made so much better because of you. But anyway, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time today.
Oh, my pleasure. I had good people. I was lucky to find people that had won Oscars and Emmys and everything. And in between their movies, I would hire them to come over to Star Trek.
I noticed an Emmy strategically placed to your right.
Yes.
that old thing.
Yeah. Oh, how'd that get there? Beautiful.
I had an extra one and didn't know where to put it. So it was fun, and I don't think any of us ever thought of, oh boy, we're going to win an Emmy. But Star Trek did. We got nominated every year of the season, and most of the time it was whether it was Deep Space Nine or whatever, we got nominated because aside from the makeup artists, I had just wonderful people working in the lab.
Well, you deserved it. You're a super legend in this good business. We didn't even get to talk about the Bolian, which I thought was excellently done.
That was
in
fun.
This episode.
Yeah, actually, we do have. I mean, if you got a second to say something about the Bolian, who was played by, what is his name? Michael something. Really love that actor.
Yeah, he's well-known.
One night he wanted to wear his makeup home and show the kids. Can you imagine him driving down the street and going by in a car and getting
Michael Berryman. Michael Berryman is his name. Yeah. He was amazing in Devil's Rejects, if I remember correctly. That's where I really fell in love with the guy. But that was the very first Bolian that you created there.
Yes, and it was interesting because again, no directions or anything, but just in looking at Michael, he had very thin hair, so we thought, well, make him bald. That'd be a good idea. So actually constructed a bald head that had we split his face in half with a stripe that went in the side, and there was a piece on his nose, and he had earlobes. And it's interesting in doing aliens because you're going along, you're going, what color are we going to make him? And you go, well, let's see, the last episode we had an orange one, so let's make it blue.
Yeah.
That's how you pick the color.
So we can make him blue. And then by putting the blue on him, he was, which was a light blue, it just looked very flat and plain. So what I did is I made a stencil up, and we made watermelon marks out of darker blue that went around all the way down his back and across the top of the head. So,
and I also heard, coincidentally, that Bolians were named after the director of this episode, Cliff Bol.
Oh,
I guess you didn't know that, but that's what I had heard. Yeah,
nicknames get tacked on to people all the time. Like the Ferengis got called the buttheads because if you looked at it from the back, it's just over time things got their names. But did Cliff direct that one? I don't think he did, or did he?
He directed this one, Conspiracy, which was the first.
I know that.
Yeah,
I mean for a Bolian, whether he directed that one or not. Oh no, there was Bolian in it. You said
this was the first Bolian in this episode, I believe.
Which every time we see a Bolian, by the way, Ryan gets excited because that's one of his favorite aliens.
It's true. That is this episode was the creation of the alien that is my favorite Star Trek alien, the Bolians. They're very underutilized, but I'm very happy you created
them. There was
them.
Mr. Mock.
Yeah, he's later on in there for sure.
He's later on,
and you derived it with an aquatic kind of origin. Is that the idea?
I don't know. And it's interesting. I was just a couple of weeks ago. I was doing a Zoom with a convention in Long Island, New York, and they said, "How do you think of these things up?" And I thought, well, and then I was explaining that I didn't want to do fantasy because that was Star Wars. So I had to find something. And by going through all the books, I had a huge library that I collected. And I would make the aliens out of a composition of 2 or 3 things on Earth that you're familiar with. You're familiar with the image, but you're not familiar with the 2 or 3 of them put together. And a man said, in other words, you do hybrids. And I said, you're right. I love that. I'm going to use it,
Yeah.
And nobody had ever said that before, but that's what I was literally designing over the years, hybrids.
And I want to just point out a similarity that I believe, when you talked about the watermelon marks on the Bolian and the kind of bringing life to the skin texture so that it didn't look just like a paint flat blue. It actually looked like a skin of some kind of, of animal. That same kind of thing reminds me of the Avatar when you see the details and how they make the avatars in the movie Avatar. So it's it's just the detail. They copied you. That's what I'm trying to say. They owe you some money and another award.
Yeah. Now that's funny because some new show will come out or something like that, and I'll look at it and I'll go, "Oh, that looks like a Harrigan." I will see some of my own things. And there was one episode or one with an Enterprise, the green people that we had.
Orions.
Yeah. And I got an inspiration from Hellraiser. And so there we have on some of the people.
Cool.
Yeah. The strings and the things, into their skin and everything. But, but Hellraiser 1 was interesting, but the rest of them were baths of blood.
All right.
It's an honor, Mr. Westmore, always to talk with you. What Stan Lee is to comic books, you are to makeup and science fiction, his business. And it's always a pleasure to just hear some of your thoughts and your insight.
I can give you a little hint. We've been working on a documentary of me. So we've been filming every so often. I sit down and chat and tell stories like we're doing here.
Mm-hmm. So everybody stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned for that.
And you will recognize the production company doing it, by the way, everybody at home. If you're thinking, wait, is it the same company that's doing it? Yes, it is. So stick around for that, everybody. But also, everybody, we're going to hop over to the other side. We'd like to give our very special thanks to Mr. Michael Westmore for taking the time and just dropping so much cool information, insights, and stories with us. We really appreciate you, Michael. Everybody, stick around. Yeah. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton. As you know, this is the Next Generation episode, season 1 episode, Conspiracy. Whoa, we still have so much more to talk about. But first, let's talk about these here trivioids. The Enterprise is en route to the ocean world of Pacifica, which is interesting because, yeah, the Bolians are aquatic. I remember reading about that. You're correct. They are aquatic for sure.
Yeah.
The warm blue waters and fine beaches make Pacifica a jewel of the galaxy. Geordi tells Data a joke, not for the last time. Data tests out his laughing skills. That was creepy. Riker FaceTimes in on Picard in bed. Also strange. Like, does it have to be video at 2 a.m. or whatever? Ditalics B is one of the 7 uninhabited planets mined for the Federation by the Ditalics Mining Company. Captain Picard met Captain Rix at the Altarian Conference, and Captain Tryla Scott made Captain faster than anyone in Starfleet history. Man, just to reiterate, Michael Berryman, the actor that plays Captain Rix, I love that guy. He was in Devil's Rejects and a bunch of other things, and he's just such a super talented character actor, really interesting guy. Anyway, Cirroc, I kept thinking of you watching this episode. At what point were you like, whoa, what the heck? Is this Star Trek?
Yeah, it's funny because in the beginning I was thinking that this was like a Changeling episode. The way they started the episode off and said, "Oh, Starfleet's been infiltrated and we don't know who's who." I'm thinking, is this a Changeling? Is this the beginning of the Changelings? And is this the beginning of that storyline? That's where my head is going from the beginning, because that's exactly how they did this Changeling introduction when they said, "Starfleet doesn't know what's going on. Don't talk. This is a secure channel. I don't know who I can trust." So that was my initial thought. Then I saw that little bug in the box, and I'm like, "The hell is this?" That threw me off. I was like, "What is that bug? Like, what is this? Is that like an explosive device? Like is that some kind of high tech explosive device, or is it an information crawler? Supposed to be stealing your information?" I couldn't figure out what the hell that thing was. So then when they finally did reveal that this was about like the invasion of the body snatcher bugs, basically, I was like, that's when I said, is this Star Trek? Is this Star Trek? Or is this like aliens or something? This is...
Yeah, when Remek's face gets vaporized, I must have watched that like 5 times. I kept rewinding and going back there and all this stuff. I was just like, this is just not something you're used to seeing in Star Trek. And I can only imagine people back in 1988 watching, Star Trek, the first season of Next Generation. They're used to Kirk and Spock, and they see this and they're like, what the just happened? What was that? And they're like turning the kids away. I mean, oh, it's so cool.
This comes out of nowhere compared to the rest of the
totally
show.
Out of nowhere, yeah,
compared to the rest of the show, everything has been really kind of family friendly to a certain degree, minus certain episodes, couple episodes here and there. But yeah, this one turned out to be like gory and bloody and gut, just a gory kind of episode. And I don't know, it did seem a little bit out of place. But I did I did think about the budget when you mentioned like, whoa, how much did this thing cost? because of the special effects, because of the aliens, and also because they were on the Federation planet, and I knew they had to build that Federation set with also the Federation office. It seemed like it was an expensive episode.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing I did take away from it. And I'm like, well, I guess they went with a kind of a more horror film type of feel for this episode. The other thing that reminded me of the Changelings is the whole using past interactions and past stories, encounters with somebody to verify whether it was them or not. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that this Changeling storyline borrowed, even in this latest season of Picard, when the fake Tuvok comes on. They kind of have the same dialogue. Like, do you remember that time that we were here and there? And,
totally.
And they're trying to trip you up to see if you will remember the details or if you're an imposter or the real thing. So that's what some of the similarities I got from the Changeling storyline and this bugs.
Now, speaking of Picard, there were some people during the season 3 of Picard when they were saying that the Federation's been infiltrated. There were some people that theorized that it was these aliens coming back. They're like, are the conspiracy aliens finally back? Because if you recall, they said that they sent out a homing beacon, suggesting that there will be more of these aliens coming at some point. Somewhere down the line, we're going to see these aliens again. Spoiler alert, didn't happen in the Next Generation. So we kept expecting it to come back, but it doesn't. So then when this happened in season 3 of Picard, people started guessing, is this finally those conspiracy? I feel like Lower Decks might do it, though. Lower Decks seems like they're going to not leave any stone unturned. But one thing I wanted to ask you was, did you remember those two guys, Remick and who was the Admiral? Admiral Gregory something. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Gregory Quinn. Yeah. So the old guy, Gregory Quinn, and the young Lieutenant Remick, do you remember them from a previous episode? Remember in Coming of Age, the Admiral was asking Picard and being like suspicious of him and saying, I'm just testing you out. There's some things that may be coming up. And then Remick was the guy that asked questions of every single officer about Picard. Remember, he was interviewing Troy and Data and Geordi, all these tough questions. And they're like, why are you acting so suspicious? And then the Admiral told Picard, well, there's something that may be coming up. I don't know what yet. And then Remick at the end says, like, I'd love to serve with you someday, Picard. Anyway, 6 episodes later, those two are back. And now we know it. So this is like a continuation of that episode, Coming of Age. So that's just kind of an interesting thing, because when we saw that episode, Coming of Age, I remember you and Denise were both saying, that's it. So what's the conspiracy? What's the infiltration? And I'm like, tee-hee, 6 episodes later, we find out. So it's nice.
Oh, yeah. And I didn't recognize Remick or the Admiral Quinn from that episode. Now that you say that, because that Remick was a real jerk that episode.
Exactly.
And I wonder, was he already possessed by the bug in that episode?
It's a good theory. I don't know. They never. I mean, this is
because he was holding the queen entity inside of it, right? According to this episode. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I guess it's entirely possible.
I'm glad they buried this episode. We don't need to visit this again. Lower Decks.
I want to see it. I want to see a third episode. I want to see a third one with people's guts coming out and people eating bugs and swallowing slugs and whatever. Oh yeah, and they were eating those grubs too. And I thought of Nog and the Ferengi, because they love those tube grubs.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I felt the way Picard felt when he opened the bowl. He was like, not gonna do this. And besides, wouldn't you like Yeah, I need to know what's on the menu before we proceed.
Yeah, it felt like it was the same bugs that we see Ferengi eat. Whenever they have Ferengi doing whatever, like I feel like we've seen those exact grubs. I guess there's some kind of grub, some kind of larva. Actually, hopefully, if Dr. Susan V. Gruner joins in the free for all in a few minutes, we could ask her. What did you think of Data's laugh?
I wrote down here. I said that's how Ryan laughs at my jokes. So I was perfectly pleased by it.
Where I'm just like, oh, now's the time to laugh. Here we go.
Yeah. No, I thought that was hilarious. I really loved it. And actually, it reminded me too also of something you said on the last review, which is that Data was finally given a job that was suited specifically to his set of skills when they gave him the away team of one mission.
And they did it again here.
And again in this episode, they did it, where Picard says, I have something suited. It literally says suited for your set of skills or something to that effect. And I thought, wow, Ryan just picked that up and the writers picked it up and doubled down on it, did it again. So I really like that.
They also showcased Commander Riker doing a jump kick. That was pretty cool. I watched that a few times where he like jumps up and ha! There were so many cool things in this episode. It must have taken me 2 hours to watch this episode because I kept rewinding and rewatching certain parts, like the jump kick, all the gory stuff. There was so much. The laugh, Data's laugh.
Data's laugh. Yes. I thought it was cool that they had the black woman Captain Scott, in there, even though she turned out to be a host for these alien things.
But she wasn't a host when she became captain faster than anybody else. Yeah.
I thought that was a cool little, background for her character and storyline for her.
Especially in a sea of like 38 old white admirals. It's nice to have somebody that's not exactly the same. It was nice to see.
I was happy about that. Code 47. I thought, here we go with the number 47. It always pops up.
That was a good catch. 47. Yep. That's what it was. Hey, let's do the home run of the day. Ooh, I wonder what episode 47 would be. It's 247 right now, coincidentally. The home run of the day, home run of the episode. Special thanks to Carrie Schwent for making this for us. Who gets the home run today?
It's got to go to Mike Westmore. It's got to go to Mike Westmore. The makeup was amazing. It was so realistic that it was actually almost abrasive and offensive to watch. Like
like us.
Like, hey, I got to be ready for this. Like us. So no, I think he just did a fantastic job. We got to see the Bolian. I love that. And then like the effects in the neck. I mean, that was something that I was just really paying attention to. And like I had to rewind that a few times. I just really liked. I think that he gets the home run of this episode.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I think it's an easy choice for me too. It's a home run for Michael Westmore and his team. Because as he always mentions that he was surrounded by very good people, and I'm sure he was, but he was definitely the tip of the spear. And if something doesn't go right, the producers come to him. So he's the guy that deserves the home run. He nailed it. He made this episode extremely memorable for many people. They go, oh, conspiracy, huh? That one. So let's give a special thanks to some of our friends. Their names are Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan, our good pal Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anna Post, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Gu, of course, and Dequeue, Neal Akasaka, Our good friend Justine Norton-Kertson, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, my live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Allison, Leach Hyde, Jed Thompson, Classic, Marcia Schreier, Brandon Gant, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, the bug lady. Maybe she'll tell us what those bugs were, scrubs, and of course, Jason Okun. Everybody stick around. We've got the free-for-all up next. Here it comes. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule. This is the free-for-all. It's fun time. Of course, Malissa Longo has joined us.
Hi.
Eve England, guess what? Out in Wales is also here. Anil O. Polat, don't forget the O. He's leading the way. He's got the Enterprise D following him. We've got Jason Okun, of course, with a really cool poster in his background, as per usual. On a post is showing off a newly cadetted, I guess we can say, officer. We also have Dr. Mohamed Noor. He says he's at the beach. Looks like he's just sitting on the floor in a room. Faith Howell is hanging out on the bridge of the Enterprise D as well. Mai is, guess what, live in Tokyo, of course. We have Chris McGee. Oh, he's got what was that shirt that Scott Jensen made?
Isolinear chip.
Thank you, isolinear chip. Oh, whoops-a-daisy. I want to say self-sealing isolinear chip. We've also got Carrie Schwent with ground beef behind her, maybe. And Allison Leach Hyde is driving home as quickly as possible, but also very safely with her seatbelt. Anyway, Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
I don't know if people like this that much. I'm going to say a 6.6.
Nervous.
Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know?
Yeah, I think it should be much higher, but I do agree that I know I liked it, so that might mean that other people hated it.
I'll be bold and guess 7.
7.
I like the 6.6 guess, but over 2. Yeah, this is not my favorite.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think Mohammed probably has it right. Maybe like a 7.7, 7.1. It's probably there.
Excellent guesses, everybody. Unfortunately, you're way off. It is an 8.1 on IMDb, and deservedly so.
Wow.
Are you serious, though? Are
Yeah,
you being real?
8.1. I think it's easily the highest rated one.
Gotta be
in
the
all
first one.
season.
Yeah, the highest.
In the first season. Yeah.
Eve England gets
Wow.
it. She's an IMDb whisperer. Actually, speaking of IMDb, if y'all are okay with it, I couldn't help but last night look over a couple of the reviews because I wanted to see the people that gave it a 1. I wanted to see what they said. If they're like, this is not my Star Trek, too gory, 1988, whatever. And then there was only really 1 or 2. And so I was like, let me just check the 10s real quick. And I saw this really cool one. So I'd like to read the second half of it. The first half was just saying something, who cares? Here's the second half. So this person says, love that they used a guy we already hated for the mother bug. Love Picard ducks a phaser and then makes a face of disgust at the alien. Jean-Luc Picard might be an idealistic explorer who values life, but he's got a little bug stomping Kirk deep down. Only critique? Worf went down like a punk. He had to know the old man got the jump on Riker, and Will ain't no pushover. Get your head in the game, Worf. I think that review deserves a 10.
That's a great review.
Fantastic.
Oh, man.
We can all just go home now.
That was great.
So we set the
And
bar
you said
pretty
Tierney
high.
wrote that?
We set the bar up real high, everybody. You gotta meet that level. Melissa Longo, get us started, please,
Yes.
if you would.
I had so much fun with this episode. I couldn't look away. Every 10 seconds, I was like, ew, 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 barf, ew. It was awesome. And because of all of the gross stuff, starting with the tube grubs, they look like tube grubs to me. Gross. And then it just got worse from there. And I just read on IMDb that they blew up a mold of Paul Newman's face that was filled with raw meat. Then they brought Dan Curry's son to the set to make sure that it worked on kids and what they thought of it. He was like, that's so cool. And then
Wow.
Dan Curry's son suggested that they made little action figures of Remick with his head blowing up, which would have been awesome. Yeah, so I had a lot of fun during this episode. I liked that the computer interrupted Data when he was going on too long. That was really funny. And the line for me that stood out was Worf saying, "Swimming is too much like bathing."
Yeah. He doesn't like bathing?
Yeah. But there was mystery to this episode too, and I wasn't sure who to trust and who not to trust. And I was like, bad guy, maybe. Bad guy, maybe. Bad guy, maybe. I'm not sure. But they were all bad guys, so, yeah. Fun. That's what I thought.
That was pretty solid.
Ew.
Thank you, Melissa Longo. I'm also very excited to know what Eve England thought of this episode, because she's been poo-pooing every episode with her finger in the air. And then when I saw this, I was thinking about Cirroc and I was thinking about Eve, and I was like, okay, they've got to at least have strong feelings on this one. What do you say, Eve?
Oh, this was just literally bloody brilliant. I just thought this is what I've been waiting for all of this time so far. So I was like, yeah, this is just what I wanted to watch. And I thought, you take aside all the kind of really 80s Evil Dead style sci-fi horror gore, which super naff, but I just absolutely love that. I just thought it was just a really well constructed episode. Like I just felt so unnerved for that first half, particularly. It was so stressful. It was so creepy. And when they were in that cave, the combination of the music and then the kind of cave water sounds and the lighting, it was just, again, the music was just phenomenal. I very much felt the same way I felt when I was watching Psycho, and the way that kind of score built up that tension for the whole of the first part of that movie. So I just loved the fact that it was super dark. I loved how it ended with that cliffhanger where we had that ominous kind of homing beacon at the end. I was like, oh yeah, this is so cool. And I've probably got a few more things than I'd normally have to say on this, but I especially liked how it was, we've just seen, it was basically the critique of the Federation. We've had such a kind of idealistic view of them so far. And then, they're presenting with the best of the best. And then basically we just see them sleepwalking into this, invasion of the body snatchers, literally. And it showed us how, I was thinking it's just quite unnerving how nobody even noticed. And they were all just following orders. And even Picard had notice of this from Admiral Quinn a few episodes ago. And I was like, he didn't even take it on board or do anything about it. And I was like, this is a bit worrying, considering these are supposed to be the best of the best. And then I just thought it was really fascinating how, and I don't know if this was the intention, but it sort of, I felt like the whole story was trying to compare the Federation as an institution with the bug parasites, and how, the bugs were constantly justifying their existence and what they were doing, and that, they were trying to build that comparison between, the theatre and how they were very alike, and how this was a great symbiotic relationship. And I just thought then how Quinn uses the term assimilate then by reference to the Federations, or how people join the Federation. And I just thought that was just such a really good observation from an outsider as well, because obviously it wasn't Quinn, it was the bug talking. And I just thought, is this a suggestion that, the Federation actually isn't any better than the bug parasites, or looking forward better than the Borg? And I just loved how they just asked that question in this episode. And it just really resonated with me. And I just thought, this is what we really get to look forward to at the latest stages of Deep Space Nine, for example. And I just, for me, this episode just felt, and so I have my Deep Space Nine t-shirt today, because I just thought this is a Deep Space Nine episode and I want to see more of it.
Yeah. Well, you're on mute.
Great Evil Dead reference, by the way. Thank you very much, Eve. Speaking of which, you know who shops at S-Mart? Faith Howell. Faith, what did you think of this episode?
So this one, I have to say, really creeped me out as a kid, for sure. Like the thing in the neck, and then the whole thing at the end. It was a complete turnoff when I was 2. But I kind of did rewatching. Really enjoyed the intrigue of it all, and it really reminded me of what we kind of just watched with Picard and the changeling invasion. And I almost wondered how cool would it have been if they could have connected that piece and brought this back in, and or possibly if these guys might come back, should we ever see Legacy become a thing, which it's going to. Right. I'm going to will it into existence.
Yeah.
So but and I agree with Eve. I really was thinking how this is kind of a weird episode for an episodic TV show. It really could have been a much bigger arc along the lines of what we saw in Deep Space Nine. So that's exactly what I had in my notes too. So
very nice. Thank you very much, Faith. We forgot there was a non-appearance mention today too, right?
Certainly was.
Which was? Who was?
Jack Crusher.
Jack Crusher.
That's the one.
He's
that guy's everywhere. Anil O. Polat is here as well. What's up, Anil? What do you think of this episode?
Yeah, I like this one. It was it's just wild. Like, I just imagine the writers and the makeup team, they were just throwing stuff at a wall, and it just comes together really nice.
Those brains.
And the tempo of this episode compared to what we've seen so far is really good. Like, every scene is pushing the action. There are things happening. It's visually interesting, and I like it when they take a big swing like this, and then you get a very memorable episode, And it also ties into a couple of episodes in the past, which wasn't really done. So it was kind of interesting, but it was just fun. It was just really fun, as creepy as it was. I think all Star Trek, but especially Next Gen, does that Twilight Zone type of feel very well. And I don't know if it's because it's 80s look, it's just creepier, but it does that Twilight Zone really, really well. I think I like those kind of weird episodes, and this is definitely a very weird episode.
Anil, you really got Cirroc's attention when you mentioned Twilight Zone. The look in his eye, watched her. He's like, I'm listening. He loves the Twilight Zone. Good reason.
There's more episodes like that coming up. So,
yay!
Somebody who hates the Twilight Zone, however, sadly, is Jason Okun. But what did you think of this episode, by the way?
It was exactly like the Twilight Zone. No, this is certainly, as I think we all kind of understand, a little bit of an unusual episode of Next Gen, certainly for the first season, and I think for the entire run. For me, I have a soft spot for it. It probably is my favorite of the first season, just because of how unusual it is. Doesn't mean it's great. It's just perhaps, we're talking about a relative scale here. I see it sort of as the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I guess the good, as we talked about, it's probably one of the sort of faster paced episodes of the season. So there's kind of not a dull moment. It moves along pretty fast. I think the teaser is probably the best teaser we've seen in the first season, and maybe one of the best teasers through of the entire Next Gen run. Typically, you just have something that sort of peters out, which is a bit different from the original series, where they really had to grab you by the time you're done with the teaser. Otherwise, they were afraid people were going to switch channels. So they paid a lot of attention. Even in the crappiest of episodes, the teasers were usually pretty good. So that kind of moves along very well. I think frankly, on the production side, there are a lot of warts and bugs, and I'll leave it for later.
Sure.
I have a whole list of these things. I mean, it's probably the longest list I've had. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not a big fan of Cliff Bowles' style, and I think it kind of held back the show quite a bit. It's a little. This could have been something that could have looked a hell of a lot better with a bit more creativity to it. The ugly, obviously, is the exploding head and the bugs and everything. And I always kind of wondered, where the hell do these bugs sit over there? There's not enough space for it. I mean, you wouldn't be able to breathe. And when it comes to the Remick creature, how the hell is he moving with that stuff inside him? I mean, how's that functioning? I mean, it's just, it looks kind of gory and ugly, but, check your brain at the door kind of moment.
Yep.
I think for me. So again, I'll save some of it for later, but it's just, it's a fun thing to watch if you don't think about it too much. And, this whole thing has been mentioned that it does sort of give you that feeling, especially if you've seen Picard season 3. I think once, actually, when I started watching that season, that's the episode I kept thinking about in terms of a sort of feeling that you're looking at somebody and you don't know whether they're friend or foe or what's happening. So and I think at least there was some chatter that perhaps this is what season 3 was based on. Obviously, it didn't turn out to be that way. But, and again, this episode has somewhat of a tortured history to it in terms of a story. And I'm not going to go into that. But I think from what I understand, originally the concept was something that turned into DS9's Homefront and Paradise Lost. That's what it was supposed to be. There wasn't supposed to be any creatures in it. But I guess Gene didn't really want Starfleet to be like that. So they turned it into the alien influence to at least give some sort of a commentary, but it was supposed to be sort of an internal struggle within Starfleet. So again, it's entertaining. It has its warts, and as far as the first season is concerned, I think it's a step up, and I'll save the rest for later.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about the directing talk. That's interesting. Good eye. Dr. Mohamed Noor, however, his eyebrows went up when you said, how could somebody keep moving when they have, because he loves to talk about Robo Roach. But what did you think of this episode?
I did think about Robo Roach. That's funny. Actually, this is one of my favorite episodes from season 1, honestly. And I remember actually watching it in first run, and I was a little bit older than Faith, so it didn't creep me out quite as much. But yeah, it leaves me with lots of questions. So I'm always happy when I see non-humanoid aliens, because I'm like, yes, really like diverse life out there. But some of the questions I have, like, first of all, like, how do these things evolve, right? Were there like humanoids on their home world and they were initially infected? Maybe. I mean, it seems like there's so many humanoids in Star Trek, it's possible. How do they communicate from the mother to the others? And I think Faith put something in the comments about that. The only thing I could come up with is maybe something like radio waves or something like that, because it's like, it wouldn't be chemical because that wouldn't go far enough and things like that, but maybe some sort of radio waves. I don't know. I can make up a story for it. The last one was this is kind of an extra gross one, but like, how does this work actually inside the body? And is the human brain actually still aware of what's happening, but basically cut out of the driver's seat? And essentially, like, you're just watching what's happening, but you're powerless to actually move anything in your body. We didn't actually, Admiral Quinn could now answer that question. We didn't hear the answer, but like, it's fun to speculate what actually was going on in that case. It definitely was not the case with a lot of infections where it basically just drugging the person, because there clearly was communication and intentionality and stuff like that. But the specifics would be fun to speculate on. So I enjoyed it.
Nice. All right. Very nice. Thank you very much, Dr. Noor. Mai is live in Tokyo. What's up, Mai? Your thoughts on this episode? Why did you love it so much?
I loved it. Oh, wait, that's the wrong episode. Starting with the music during Walker's message, and then his eyes. Wow. Swiss, cheddar, Monterey Jack, just pure cheese the entire time. I was like, no. This episode, though, the one thing about this episode being a Bay Area kid that bugs me is if you look right here where you can see the city, this is the downtown area of San Francisco. And the only way you could be looking at that from this perspective is if you were no. If you were in the Marin Headlands, there's no possible way you do it. And so, in everything except the Breen attack, where in the aftermath where the Academy is shown as being on the northeast side of near Sausalito, the headquarters is always located in the Presidio, which is on the southeast side of the bridge, and as in the one with the whales. This part of the city here, it's downtown, and to see it, and to be perpendicular to the North Tower, which is what this is, you would have to be literally on the Mrid Headlands. And the Mrid Headlands are built like this, not flat like that. So this lack of continuity for the headquarters in the Bay Area did not sit well with this Berkeley kid. I'm sorry. That was they dropped the ball big time on that one. What can I say? I'm from the Bay Area.
Well,
that's a Dan Curry thing, right? Is that his fault? Well, I'll talk to Dan about that.
I mean, didn't they use the shot from Star Trek 4 to begin with? I don't think it was new. I think they literally plumped it from there. I think they just plundered that same shot.
The Star Trek 4 used southeast side.
I think they plundered this one. I don't know if they created it. It looks like it was plundered from something else.
This is northwest, because that's the North Tower. And you're not actually in the bay at this point. You're out towards the Pacific Ocean, out in the Marin Headlands. Right. There's no possible way this is from the Presidio side, which is what Star Trek 4 was.
That's it. We're dropping that IMDb score.
Do it.
Thumbs down. Thanks, Mike. Good stuff. And you're right. Yeah, coming from that angle, it would have to be the Pacific Ocean. Carrie Schwent is here, hanging out in ground beef. Looks delicious. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a very, very good one. Eric was looking forward to watching this one with me, mostly for the Riker getting his butt kicked by an old man. That's kind of his favorite part of it. When we finished taking my notes for the last episode, we looked forward to this one, and I asked him, wait, I couldn't remember too much about it at first, but then I asked him, is this the one where the guy's head goes all sploochy? And he said yes. So then, watching it and then looking at the notes, I read the note that Melissa said about filling a head with meat. So that's why I had to go for a picture of ground beef for the background. I couldn't help myself. I love horror movies. They're one of my favorite things to watch. The gorier, the better. The only thing I don't like about horror movies is anything that skitters. It just gives me the heebies. Anything that skitters. The worms, I'm okay when they're not actively wriggling, but once they start wriggling, I'm out. I think they're cool looking, don't get me wrong, but once they start wriggling, absolutely, I am out. And in the scene, when Worf gets thrown against the wall, if you look closely, the panel with the replicator shifts, like actively moves, like probably a good few inches back and forth.
Somebody call Miles.
Right. I love the actor that played the Bolian captain. He's been in so many fantastic horror and horror adjacent things, and apparently, according to IMDb, he loved his makeup so much he wore it home. He didn't want to take it off. He actually wore it all the way home because he just enjoyed how he looked.
That's what Westmore was telling us, right? Cirroc, yeah, that's Michael Berryman, the actor. Love that guy.
Yeah, I think that it's just very cool. And I never need to hear Data laugh like that again, like he was when he's trying to figure out that joke. Just hard pass on that. Oh, where was it? Yeah. Okay, yep.
I'd like to hear the 911 calls of the people who saw the blue guy driving down the street. Officer, right, I swear there's a alien guy driving a
We're being invaded by aliens in a Tercel.
Yeah, what's going on?
I've got a few other blink and you miss it sort of things, but I'll save that for later. But what I'll finish with is, once again, the poor crew is deprived of anything resembling shore leave. It's like Lucy and the football. They keep getting teased with it, and it keeps getting kicked out, pulled out from under them when they try to kick at it. So I decided for my limerick for the episode to make a plea to the powers that be on their behalf. This poor crew really deserves some shore leave, time that they think that they'll never receive. Something always comes up, so the fun ends up bumped. It's time to get this ship a reprieve. Troy just wants to go for a swim.
Yeah.
Let her
like
swim.
bathing.
I have so many questions about. Yeah, has he been stinking up the bridge this whole time? There's so many questions.
Well, thanks very much, Carrie.
For that Zazaman bar.
That's right. The dancing bar.
That dancing bar.
Chris McGee, the Dark Lord, is here with his isolinear chip. What's up, Chris? What'd you think of this one?
So this one definitely, like everyone else, has stuck in my memory over the years. And I always think of it as, you got horror in my sci-fi. You got sci-fi in my horror. But unlike Carrie, I mean, I do like horror a lot. I've seen plenty of it, but it's not exactly my favorite genre. I mean, after all, I did meet the amazing Bruce Campbell at one point earlier this year. So that was a fantastic experience. But I will say, and of course, as Carrie also mentioned, the Michael Berryman, it's always great seeing him whenever he pops up. Of course, mostly known, I think, for The Hills Have Eyes, but plenty of other well-known movies, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Weird Science, and a whole litany of others I won't get into right now. But great actor. I thought, again, back to the horror aspect, I remember reading or hearing about that this episode was censored in some countries where they had cut out that sequence. I think it was England, maybe Wales as well. I'm not sure. Australia. Do you remember that, Eve, as well?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch it, but I did read on the BBC. I mean, when I watched Predator for the first time, I'd never seen those skinned bodies because it was always cut out of the TV version. Yeah, everything like that was cut out. Yeah.
I also loved how similar this movie is to this episode, to one of my favorite movies of all time. Again, a horror film, John Carpenter's The Thing, where again, it's like, you don't know who to trust, who's the alien. Fantastic movie if you haven't seen it. And lastly, I was really hoping when I won't spoil anything about Picard season 3, but I will say that, early on, very first episode, Picard gets a message saying, don't trust anyone. And I was really hoping it was going to be a continuation of this episode. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So lastly, the memorable quote of the episode, there's so many good ones, but I'll just go ahead and pick this one that stuck with me. We seek peaceful coexistence.
Excellent. Yeah, but the don't trust anyone line, we're like, heard that one before, right? That's like in every movie practically, and in Picard, episode 1 of season 3. Anna Post is here hanging out. So good to see you back. What are your thoughts on this episode?
This episode always left me with a lot more questions than anything else. Like, I think Worf says there's no bodies in the debris. What happened to all the bodies? Are people actually dead or are they not dead? Coming back to are people dead? Crusher says she can't detach the alien, without killing the patient. Yet Quinn, is he the only one that survives? Did everyone else survive after the bugs left them? It never mentions if those people were just dead with I was never sure if they're like dead and that's why the bugs leave them, or if they're just like stunned so the bugs leave them. Isela has questions too. And I was always really sad that they had that one, super young captain, looks like she's going lots of places, and then she's the one they possibly kill. That always bothered me that it was her instead of Rix that died. But what happened to all the bodies on the spaceship? And are these related to the earworms? And it was always funny that it was this episode that had the continuation from a previous episode and was almost set up as to be more of an arc, but then was never really returned to. So it left me questioning quite a bit. But
a lot of questions there. Very nice. Thank you very much, Anna. Lastly, of course, Allison Leach Hyde is here. What's up? glad to see you made it home. What'd you think of this episode?
I've always liked this episode. It was very different than the rest of the season. I liked, when all the captains get together on the mining planet and it's all red, and I always like the lighting in that set with the gangway down into it. So I liked all the new things in it, which was a ton of fun. When I read a bit about this episode, it was Tracy Torme really wanted it to be about an internal military coup, and Gene said no. And so it's like, okay, how about if it's aliens? And then Maurice is like, no, it's too dark. What everyone says about Deep Space Nine. But Rick Berman, Justman, wrote all their names down somewhere. They really liked it. So they're like, no, let's do it. So that's how we ended up with this episode. And so I like that they fought for it and tweaked it enough to make it okay for the Star Trek Bible for Next Gen to get it to go. So I like this one. My favorite quote is from Data, and that is, "One can swim in moonlight." So that's my favorite. And that he frustrates the computer. I thought that was great.
I love that.
And it yells. And just shows, yeah, she's sentient and she's annoyed with Data. We can all get annoyed with Data for him. Computer and Riker get annoyed with him in this episode. So great episode for Data. And I like that it was different and we got some cool suspense going on, which we don't usually get.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks very much, Allison. Well, Cirroc, it's time to close the book on this memorable episode. Do you have any final thoughts on it?
I got just a couple of little knick-knack final thoughts. One, I like the doors that were in the Starfleet headquarters main office. They were these wood panel doors with a glass Starfleet kind of inlay in it. I like the door. I thought to myself, why wouldn't Worf or LaForge have a phaser on them when they came running for backup after Riker calls for backup? It just seems like if somebody's calling for backup, you bring your phaser. I thought it was also a little bit dated for LaForge to say that he had been picked up like a rag doll. And when he says, yeah, he picked me up like a rag doll, I'm thinking, well, what would you know about a rag doll like 400 years from now? And is that really a statement, like a phrase that people are going to still continue to use? There would be some kind of other light thing that you would pick somebody up like, I would assume. I thought it was extremely weird that these parasite creatures have a love for the theater. What do they? Is there a Broadway on their planet? Like, what do they get reruns of Arthur Miller stuff? How do they have a love for Shakespeare and whatnot? I just thought that was like, where does that come from? I just don't see that in their culture. All these bugs getting around watching plays, it just didn't seem right. And that's pretty much it. I'm not the biggest on horror, so that's why it was harder for me a little bit. The gory and all the blood and stuff. I don't really need it to get a good story. I like when it's suggestive stuff or when they don't actually show things. And I think that's part of the reason why I gave it a lower score. But I did think that it was Star Trek-y in the way that it was encountering an alien race that was non-humanoid. And I thought that was the Star Trek appeal of it for me. So mixed feelings in that way, a little bit too bloody and gory for me, but kind of like the concepts a little bit in it. So, a little bit. And then I thought also, I kind of like the story of the Beverly and Jack Crusher. They keep bringing that back up. And I'm like, wow, this is this guy gets so much backstory. He's got the most nams for the first season. Yep. Jack Crusher, he's an amazing guy. You know, this guy was special because everybody talks about him. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jack Crusher, he's our guy. All right. Well, thanks everybody. This was a lot of fun. Got a lot more to talk about. I think we'll talk about it in our next segment, Things Left Unsaid. If you want to check it out, everybody, just join Patreon, and then you can check that out. Special thanks to Malissa Longo, Eve England, Faith Howell, Anil O. Polat, Jason Okun, Mohamed Noor, who's like, I am not sticking around. I'm going to go play in the sand. My live in Tokyo, Carrie Schwent, Chris McGee, Allison Leach Hyde, and Anna Post with her cadet, of course. For Cirroc Lofton and myself, thank you all very much for joining this episode. We had a ton of fun. We hope you did too. We'll see you next time on The Seventh Rule.